Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Alan KASUJJA.
So light 'em up.
We surely deserve a round of applause. Come on, man. We are the two tallest human beings involved in this, and it's with a lot of pleasure that I'd like to introduce you to Dikembe Mutombo Mpolondo Mukamba Jean-Jacques wa Mutombo. He is a legend on many levels, one of the greats as far as athletes are concerned in the world, having featured prominently in the NBA, one of the NBA greats and top blocker. What more can I say about you, Dikembe?
Maybe future Hall of Famer next year.
Yeah, future Hall of Famer in the NBA. And now you've switched from the NBA, from playing sport, to being one of the greater humanitarians in the world, doing a lot of philanthropy work.
Thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause. Dikembe Mutombo, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when I was a kid growing up, you were one of my stars, and I wanted to be like you. Then I realized my skills.
You make me feel old, man.
Yeah, you are. You've gone on a bit. You've moved on a bit. But you know, your skills were amazing. What was it about Dikembe Mutombo that distinguished him from everybody else?
I think a lot got to do with my determination and my preparation and my approach to the game.
Right.
I think that was something that made me so much better.
Right. And now, one of the things that you're most involved in, and this is from a conversation I've had with you, is your hospital. Your hospital is one that you set up in Kinshasa in memory of your mother. And the reason you set that up was because there was a need. It has gone on to be the biggest and the most sought after, well, the best hospital in Kinshasa.
Yes.
How is it doing?
It's doing very well. Right now we have more than 420 doctors and nurses working for us. We have more than 195 beds. So we're thinking about adding another 100 beds maybe in the next 2 years. So we are very excited with the treatment that we're providing right now. People are now allowed to go to South Africa and Europe like they used to, because they have found a safe haven for them to come get a treatment to us.
That's great. Now, I just want to bring up a tweet that I tweeted yesterday. I don't know if this tweet is up and ready. It should be coming up on the screens. The guys in the background are working on that. This tweet basically talks about something. The biggest story out of Africa at the moment is Ebola.
Yes.
And that's the tweet that I sent out yesterday.
That was very good, man.
And basically, it shows a map of Ebola. And it shows that Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia are the three countries that are affected by Ebola. And that the rest of the continent is actually not affected by Ebola. And if you look at the very bottom there, the number of retweets that this tweet has had, it says 4,000. And the number of favorites is over 2,000 favorites. And my point is, when we start talking about Ebola, you're now an Ebola ambassador. You're going to be doing that work. I want you to explain to me why there is so much fuss about Ebola at the moment on the continent. Why is it such a big deal? I know people have died, and I know it is affecting certain countries, but when you look at that, it is a very small part of the continent that is affected.
It's only the small part, like you illustrate that on the map there. Africa, you have suffered from the Ebola for the past 40 years. It's not something new to us. Ebola have appeared in the continent more than 6 times in the last 40-some years, especially in Democratic Republic of Congo, Southern Sudan, and a little bit of Uganda and other parts. But we've been able to combat it and get away from it. But this time, Ebola have come, and there was a little bit of slow response.
From who?
From Guinea and I would say the government body from those 3 countries. And all they could have called help from Central African countries like Gabon, Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, and Southern Sudan. Those are the countries that have faced the disease before. So
and not America like it happened. You don't think America should have been involved and all the rest of the Western countries?
You know, before you call help from outside, it's like your house catching fire. You know, you're trying to find out where the fire is. What can you do with it before you dial 911? You might call 911, but the fire department will come. It will not gonna come right away. So there's always a way you can take care of the problem when it's happening. And I think they didn't do it.
And when you see the manner in which Ebola is being handled at the moment, someone has argued, a friend of mine has basically said that it's one of the great shames of the continent that African countries, and there are very many African doctors from my own country, Uganda, who've gone to Sierra Leone and to Liberia and have died in the course of that work. So we acknowledge those. But people feel like the continent should have risen up and done a bit more than it's actually done.
I think the continent didn't do enough. The African Union should mobilize all of the healthcare workers who have an experience with this disease to try to find a way to educate the Liberian, the Guinean, and people from Sierra Leone. We didn't do it. We wait for so long for the American, European to respond, and the response really came late. I think if there was a response, the response should have been in April when there was more than 250 deaths.
But why should we wait for the Americans and the Europeans to come and sort out, which is a matter that is obviously a very African issue?
I think it's becoming a pandemic for us in our brain, that every time we're facing a problem, we always trying to wait for the world from outside.
And how do you tackle that? Because it's not sustainable, is it?
Ebola is treatable. People need to be educated. Because when the Ebola started, so many people in the continent thought it was maybe a fever, it was malaria, it was something. And many people in the west of Africa did believe that maybe it was a myth, it was a voodoo, it was some mysterious stuff that was going on in the villages. They didn't believe that it was Ebola. I think, as the Old Testament says, people perish because of lack of the knowledge. So education continues to remain a key in our society, regardless where you live. You can live in the north of Europe, or in Africa, in Asia, but if people are not educated, people will perish.
So how do you plan to use your new role, in making sure that the Ebola situation is managed?
We have to find a way to go and speak to the people in their home languages so they can understand the fact of what is happening right now. And we need to use our, whatever we have. There's a way we can establish this. Africa needs to be more we need more cell phone communication between those villages. In some of the places in the west of Africa, as you put there in the map, there's not many cell phone towers. So if there's a cell phone tower, people can communicate with some of the main cities.
Okay, now you've been involved in the health sector practically because you own a hospital in Kinshasa. Do you think that Africa has the capacity to handle these sorts of situations? Or is there a need to build more capacity, if you know what I mean?
We are thinking about investing in so many things, but Africa is not investing in healthcare. I think that's the big failure that
Are you talking about the politicians or are you talking about private
investment?
investment?
No, I'm talking about the politician and the international community. Everybody wants to handle our leaders' money, but nobody wants to go and say that, okay, I'm going to come and build you the hospital, then I'm going to train your doctors and nurses. So in case when the disease like this happen, I give you an example for Liberia. When Ebola came to Liberia did have one general hospital in Monrovia that did have more than 250 beds. And there were so many cases of Ebola, and when people came to the hospital, there was no place to keep them. So they told people that you can go home, and if the bed open up, you can come back. That's how the Ebola spread up, by buses and taxis. That's why we have so many cases on some of those major cities.
Now, we're almost coming to the end of this discussion, but I think the core thing as far as Ebola is concerned, there are issues of African dignity. There are issues around me as an African going around the world and being castigated immediately because people will suspect that I have Ebola because I come from Africa.
It happened to me too.
How did it happen to you? What's your story?
I called a friend a couple of weeks ago when there was all of this political crisis in the United States was going on about the Ebola, and they was talking about shutting down all of the flight that's coming out from Africa. And then some of our crazy politicians in America didn't understand that there was no flight from those three countries that come to America. But they need to be educated about it. But so many people thought that because you're from Africa, some people start asking, Dikembe, when was the last time you went home? And I was like, I was home in July. Oh, have you been tested for Ebola? So it was so many stupid things was going on between even our home close friends. And I feel very bad for them, that people need to be educated about this disease instead of trying to avoid all of the African.
But the core thing there as well is the narrative, the direction, the way this discussion around Ebola is being handled. Just to give you an example, in the United States, as we go into the fall, there are many people that are going to die from influenza. They are really supposed to be going in and getting vaccinated to make sure that they don't die from the flu.
But people still dying from flu in America.
Yes,
regardless.
but they are talking about Ebola, which has killed, well,
only one person
in America. So the narrative of Ebola and the manner in which it's constructed needs to be changed as well, don't you think?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
To educate people for not living with fears. You know, we are living in a world where there's so much fear surrounding us, people becoming afraid of anything. We cannot be afraid. We have a pandemic of HIV/AIDS, which have destroyed the fabric of our society, have killed more than 20-some plus million people. But Ebola didn't kill that many people. Malaria continued to kill more than 1.5 million children under the age of 5 in Africa. Nobody's not saying that if because you come from Africa, you cannot come to the community. So there's a way that people need to be educated. It's very sad for some of us who are working very hard to make sure that the future of our continent is very bright, to see all of these things now being brought on the table.
So part of your role is going to be a defensive role, a role that is taking you to the...
Always say, no, no, no.
Not in my house. Let's give a round of applause to Mr. Dikembe Mutombo. And Dikembe, you know, in your new role, I expect you to do things like this. You know, just watch this video and see how Dikembe does it. Dikembe at his best.
The Seattle Supersonics lost only 19 games in the entire season.
Everyone said in the West, this Denver Nugget team was the least likely chance to have a chance to advance when there were about 5 teams that could win it all. Near steal.
Alfonso Ellis and then Shrimp blocked by Mutombo. Mutombo in a 5-game series, 30 block shots. That is a new NBA playoff record. Covered by Gill. 8 seconds. Perkins batted back out. McMillan, another 3, way short. That's it. Mutombo embraces the ball and the unlikely upset. One of the great upsets in NBA playoff history. The 8th seed, a team that was 2 games over 500 on the season. The Denver Nuggets, youngest in the NBA, have beaten the team with the best record in the NBA, the Seattle Supersonics. And Dikembe Mutombo, one of the stars.
Let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Dikembe Mutombo, one of the greats. Thank you very much.